So it can be so awkward. Oh, Eve? Oh, that's very good.
Everyone ready to go? All right, let's call the meeting to order. Could I have a roll call, please?
Yes, Chair Friedman,
Present.
Member Painter, Member Deering, Member Alexander, Member Douglas, and Member Ip. Thank you. You have a quorum, Chair.
Thank you very much. So could we do the Pledge of Allegiance? And I'll lead it this time. I understand that we have a change in the agenda, that one of our cases is not going forward today.
Yes, that is correct, Chair Friedman. With reference to item number 8 under new business, item A, 1605 Old Pecos Trail Private School Special Use Permit. We would like to withdraw that item as it will be managed in a different manner and does not require Board of Adjustment approval as originally thought.
Great, thank you very much. So with that change, do I have a motion to approve the tonight's agenda?
Make a motion, to approve the agenda with that change.
Do I have a second? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next is the approval of the minutes of the September 10th, 2024 meeting of the Board of Adjustment. Any questions, comments regarding those minutes? Do I have a motion to approve?
It's presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. All those in favor of approving the minutes, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries. Thank you very much, everyone. And that brings us to this evening's case, case number 2024-8667. Excuse me, the findings and conclusions of fact before tonight's case. For that case that I just mentioned, 121 Sereno Road, private school special use permit. Any questions regarding the findings of fact and conclusions of law? Okay, do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Thank you very much. A second?
I'll second.
All right. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion to approve the findings of fact and conclusions of law of case number 2024-8667 is approved.
Mr. Chair, I
Yes,
just want to clarify, the findings are not for the previous, this is for the one we had in the counselor chambers or the counselor conference room for that school on Seringa Road.
right. I got you. Okay, any old business? Okay, let's go on to tonight's case, case number 2022-6149. We're doing a 6-month review and approval of 513A Camino de los Montes, a special use permit.
And Chair Friedman, while Carly is getting set up, I would just like to introduce Dan Esquibel. I'm Heather Lamboy. I'm sorry I didn't bring my nameplate.
It's okay.
Awkward here.
Thank you, Heather.
But, and Dan Esquibel is interim planner manager. And as you know, I vacated my position. I'm now the land use director. So we'll be hiring on an assistant director soon as well. But Dan is serving as interim planner manager and usually presents to the planning commission. And I'm sure he's happy to meet you all.
Well, it's good to see you earlier today, Dan. It's good to see you this evening. And Dan's a longtime friend, and we're happy to have him with us this evening. Thank you, Heather. Carly, whenever you're ready, take your time. No, I mean it. Take your time.
Chair Friedman.
Yes.
Would now be a good time for me to recuse
Yes.
myself?
You just mentioned that you have a conflict and you want it for the record. No, you just mentioned for the record that you have a conflict and recusing yourself.
Record, I need to recuse myself. There's a conflict. Just this case.
Thanks.
Member.
Have a good evening. All right, thanks for coming.
Thank you, Chair Friedman. I'm grateful for the extra time.
Anytime.
So this is a follow-up, a 6-month review of case 2022-6149, 513 Camino de los Marquez, Zumiez Dog Daycare. There was a site visit earlier today at 4 p.m. this afternoon. Both this public hearing and that site visit were noticed via public notice, large signs, and by mailers, according to Chapter 14. So just a quick overview about special use permits. I know the board has heard this before. A special use permit is intended to provide flexibility, regulate or prevent uses within various districts. Certain uses, including veterinary establishments and dog daycares, are required to obtain special use permits within 200 feet of residential uses in order to reduce or avoid conflicts between land use types. So while this is a 6-month review, this case has been open for quite some time, as you can tell from the 2022 case number. Just to give a quick overview of the project timeline, there was a noise complaint June 7th, 2022, that caused our inspectors to go out and investigate the operations. There was a puppy patch installed without proper permitting, and this business was in effect without the proper special use permit required. So they went ahead in November of 2022, had their ENN, and then 10 subsequent days later, they applied for the special use permit on November 18th. As of February 10th, 2023, that puppy patch I mentioned was removed. And June 6th, 2023, they were before this board for the first time, their special use permit. That special use permit was approved with conditions. One of those conditions being an annual review. I presented before you July 2nd, 2024 for this annual review. On August 13, they applied for a building permit to make the necessary changes because once again in July, this was approved with conditions. Following, you also had a condition that they would return in 6 months. So very quickly, just to review the conditions of approval, there were 16 in total back in June 2023. 4 of these conditions remain partially incomplete. I want to clarify, based on the report that said 6, upon today's site visit, there's only 4 that are partially incomplete. Those being 3, 4, and 5. Run through those very quickly. Previously, my report. Okay, sorry, apologies, we're back. Previously, in my report, I said 3 was partially complete. It is fully complete. That being flooring and vertical surfaces up to 4 feet in height within all playroom enclosures shall be improved to be impervious sealed surfaces. They are. Condition 4 is partially complete. Soundproofing measures shall be installed along all party walls. 5 related to the dumpster shall be relocated as shown in the applicant's site plan, enclosed with 6-foot masonry walls on 3 sides and always gated. Moving along to 9, 10, and 14. 9 being the applicant shall include a special use permit action letter with any future building permit applications. In this case, it's partially complete because they referenced case number 2022-6149 in their application. That being their permit here. If any of the board members would like to see this permit, you may. Please request it and I can bring it up to you. 10, upon further reflection, that site visit is complete. And 14, contractor shall ensure ADA compliance for construction of required ADA accessible features. So we spoke about this at the site visit. With that, what I call the ramp is actually a gradual approach to the building. Technicalities, it's not a ramp. However, it is a low-grade entrance. So as I said, 4 out of the 16 that you implemented with the conditional approval are not complete fully. Moving along, if you could still see the screen. I think my presentation's been adjusted. If you could just give us a moment.
On.
You could say that.
Dan is consulting with IT. You're right.
So really quickly, before my next slide, I want to add some emails to the record. These are emails between our building department and the applicant's architect. If I may approach, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Carly.
And while Carly is returning to the podium, we also recently uploaded comments, public comments that we received from the public.
Thank you very much, Heather.
That is for all board members, correct? That's part of the timeline for the building permit application. This is the building permit in question, 24-37631. In this case of the building permit, there were 3 revisions resubmitted. We met on July 2nd, 2023, and they applied for their building permit August 13th, more than a month later. After that, September 4th, staff comments were complete. We passed along via our systems, EnerGov, requesting revisions of the applicant. You may see in attachment C what revisions were specifically requested. The applicant submitted a revised plan set October 11th. The second round of comments were complete November 14th by staff, and the third and final submittal by the applicant was routed November 20th to reviewers, and staff comments were complete by the 25th. The permit had all comments complete by December 5th. Payment was ready. All fees were assessed, and it was issued on December 9th. Our building division director, Richard Trujillo, is here with us this evening. If there are any further questions about the building permit process or what was required in the revisions, just to better understand ANSI, ADA compliance in this case. So I know that the audience can still see my screen, but I know board members cannot.
See you now.
Excellent, thank you. My apologies. Again, I'll say that attachment C includes permit review comments from review staff if you want to see the specific comments required for the revision process. And those emails are added to the record. Moving along quickly to the project analysis for those of you who couldn't make the site visit or those who want to recap. The BOA required Zumiez to repaint the western curb along Camino de los Marquez a federal yellow and stencil no parking. That was complete, as seen this afternoon. The rear parking lot was redesigned. It's proposed to have 20 spaces, 13 standard, 6 compact, and 1 ADA. And 2 4-space bike racks, those being inverted U bicycle racks, to meet the 8-space requirement. As you can see from that far right photo, and those of you who went on the site visit, those updates are currently permitted but incomplete. Moving quickly to the internal infrastructure, these are the previous conditions of the playrooms. They lack soundproofing, they lack the sealed flooring that we requested, and the impermeable surfaces up to 4 feet on the wall. So now you can see that these now have impermeable surfaces up the walls, well as on the floor. All playrooms now meet this condition, that being condition 3. These photos were all shared via Google by the applicant. The next one. So moving on to the project analysis, sorry about the technical difficulties for those of you at home. As I said, the party walls do not extend fully to the ceiling, so some of the noise does go all the way up and over and bleed into the other areas. There's adverse noise concerns from drop off and pickup that persist, and there are those concerns for the party walls for both adjacent businesses at 509 and that being Thrifty Queen on the other side. Waste disposal improvements, including relocation, screening, and buffering, are permitted but not complete. Many of you saw the CMU walls up on site today. And while it is in my more up-to-date presentation and not this one, staff did discuss with the fire marshal, and we did also have concerns regarding fire safety. While the International Fire Code does not cite animals or pets, in the way of fire safety, when it's taught to people about their homes, they're told to, in essence, abandon their animals, to worry about themselves and the humans in their homes. However, from getting to know Zoomies and their passionate staff, I have concerns, among other staff, about the ratios for overnight boarding. Following this is landscaping improvements and screening. The applicant worked with our DRT members, Development Review Team, to design landscaping improvements along the parking area, and that would include new landscaped areas to buffer the dumpster location. All new landscaping plans meet the requirements. They have been permitted, but they are also incomplete. They will subsequently follow the improvements to the parking. So the path forward for the board, as is included in the staff report, we did not make a recommendation for approval or denial, but we have offered various paths forward. Those being: 1, approve the continuation of the special use permit, requiring the applicant to appear before the board in 6 months to review progress on the outstanding conditions adopted on June 6, 2023. Those 4 conditions with partial completion. 2, approve the continuation of the special use permit, incorporating all existing conditions of approval and any conditions discussed in this meeting, requiring the applicant to appear before the board within 6 months to review progress on the outstanding conditions, adopted on June 6, 2023, and any new conditions incorporated this evening. Or 3, deny case 2022-6149, 513A Camino de los Marquez special use permit and require Zoomies Dog Daycare to cease operations at this location. So as I said, my colleague Richard Trujillo is here this evening. If you have any questions or comments for either of us based on this building permit or any of the process previously described, please let me know.
Thank you, Carly. At this point, are there any questions for staff? Sure. Member Painter.
For a year.
This is what we have recommended as staff. You could change these recommendations. You could change this recommendation, you could alter it.
Thank you. Other questions? Yeah.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, these are only suggested recommendations. They're there to help you formulate your own conditions. If you can use these, you can modify these, or you can come up with your own.
Thank you. Any other questions at this time? Yes.
Carly, you mentioned there was discussions with the fire department. One of our conditions was that there is a limit to the number of dogs that are at the facility. Are they meeting that requirement?
That was one of the conditions set in 2023 that was not adopted by the Board of Adjustment.
Okay.
Thank you.
And if I may approach, Chair, I will give you
course.
this building permit, then I
Thank
will
you.
return to my seat.
Select her. Thank you very much for your report, Carly. Is the applicant present? You could stand to be sworn in.
Please state your name and address for the record. Do do you solemnly declare and affirm that the testimony you have in reference to this item shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, and do this under the penalties of perjury? Mr. Chair, the applicant sworn.
Thank you. Just make sure you speak into the mic so it gets recorded and so we can hear too. Thanks. Yeah, that sounds like the mic is off right now.
Testing, testing. Good evening, members of the board. Tonight, I'm here to give you an update on our progress with the Zumiez special use permit stipulations. I'm going to go about it chronologically since our last meeting on July 2nd. I'm also going to share with you a few highlights of Zumiez activities in that same timeline. Here with me tonight, I have my architect, Hugh Driscoll, and my project manager, Evan. And they both took the lead in securing my final building permit so they could so we could finalize the stipulations. And they're available to answer any more detailed questions if you have any. I also have with me some of my Zumiez leadership. I have Chris Barlow, my operations manager, and I have Ivy Henson, my operations manager, and Carlos, the director of operations. They're here to represent the 19 employees that are heavily invested into Zumiez and the dog-loving community of Santa Fe. Let me start with my timeline. Our biggest challenge with the SUP stipulations were the ones outside the building. My landlord takes care of the building on behalf of her elderly father. And it was difficult for her to commit to the capital expenses required by the SUP stipulations. She and I had ongoing negotiations for many months prior to the July 2nd meeting. I would say we had a breakthrough at that BOA meeting on July 2nd. And on July 3rd, we had a working agreement to basically split the construction costs of the parking lot. This is, of course, unusual for a tenant to contribute to sidewalks, parking lot, and landscaping construction. But as you all know, I'm heavily invested in this project, and to move it forward, I wanted to just contribute and spend half of it. On July 31st, the Santa Fe Reporter announced Zumiez as Best of Santa Fe in 2024. In the long history of Zumiez, this was our first winning occurrence with this prestigious community award. August 2nd, in preparation for our building permit, the landlord and I hired our contractor, Technical Review Corp., and its owner, Arsenio Martinez, who has over 40 years of construction experience in the community. And our estimated project costs were about $150,000 for that project. Also on August 2nd, Zumiez took part in the Best of Santa Fe celebration party at the Rail Yard Plaza. It's always fun to mingle with the community and our customers. August 13th, my dates may be slightly off from Carly's just from getting secondhand notice. But on August 13th, after a lot of work by my architect, he worked closely with the city and the staff inspectors and submitted the plan for the first time on August 13th. August 20th, I had emailed the land use director, Heather Lamboy, just asking for any help she could contribute to expediting the process. She was kind enough at the July 2nd meeting to pull me and Hugh aside just to offer herself as a resource. My approach as a business owner has always been to offer the best facility available for my family of doggy guests. This involves investment in the actual facility, but even more important to me is investment in my staff. Sometime, I lost it in my timeline, but sometime in September, we had our second submission. October 11th, we held an open house. It was a pretty major milestone for us. We had extensively the work done inside by that time. In some areas, we had it done by a few months prior to that time. And it was nice of us to, it was a nice milestone to get to that point where we could open it up to the public and have them walk through and see it. In this industry, it's unusual to be transparent, to actually open it up to the public. And we're always proud that we do that in our facilities. Our internal expenditures at this point were right around $500,000. October 19th, we held I held a leadership training meeting conference in Phoenix, and I invited my 2 operational leaders to that meeting just to get them some leadership training. October 28th, we received additional comments back from the city from our second submission. And on October 29th, I reached out to Director Lamboy again and Manager Esquivel, just asking if there was any work we might be able to do as we were waiting for the final permit to get done. And the answer is no to that. We could do some of the tear down work, but we weren't able to get any of the other work done until we got the permit in hand. But I reached out to see if we could. November 16th, I had my second meeting with leadership, flying them in from Santa Fe to Phoenix to have their second round of leadership training. November 18th was our third submission. It was sent to the city after, again, after closely consultation with Hugh and city staff and city inspectors. And then as Carly had mentioned, December 5th, we had the building permit in hand. And our contractor at this point had been demobbed and working on other stuff, but we were able to get him back on the project on December 16th, sorry. Our exterior contractor was mobilized, but we were heading into the holiday season and the cold time for Santa Fe. So some of the work is challenging. December 17th, had the final round of leadership with the Santa Fe leadership getting flown into the Phoenix area for further training. December 30th, initial concrete pours were done, including the footers for the trash enclosure. January 3rd, the block walls of the trash enclosure were completed. We're waiting for a final review to pour the floors and install the gates. My architect thinks the trash enclosures will be operational in a couple of weeks. The completion of the remainder of the scope for the building permit is estimated in the 2-month range. The landscaping part can't be done until spring, basically. So I think that's going to push it out to the 6-month time period that staff had recommended. I think it's going to be predominantly done in the next couple of months. To conclude, I would like to say I inherited the third largest doggy daycare in all of Santa Fe in 2022. But I want to spotlight the great work of our local staff here. We've risen to the #1 position in Santa Fe as of last year. And what I'm particularly proud of is we've done it with the best quality standards that we have in this industry. As I mentioned, we were voted best by Santa Fe Reporter, but also we have over 700 Yelp reviews that have a 4.8 out of a 5.0 scale rating us that we're very proud of. And just an FYI for the members, we had 96 dogs in the facility today. We topped out at 96 dogs. At the time of the visit at 4 o'clock, we had about 70 dogs in the building. And I thank you for listening and thank you for your consideration. If you have any questions for me or my team, I'm available.
Sorry about that. Thank you very much. Questions for the applicant? Yes.
When we were there, thank you for coming, by the way, and a lot of your upgrades are really beautiful. My question would be, you said that most of the interior work had been done, but I noticed that in the large dog room, there was no soundproofing yet on the eastern wall with your adjoining neighbor. When is that scheduled to happen? And what's the plan on that one?
There was some mistakes done. We actually applied it on a wrong wall. So that's something I think we could transfer some of the soundproofing that we had kind of in that middle section to that area. So I think that soundproofing could be done for that eastern neighbor in the next week or two. Just a matter of ordering the material and getting it applied.
Go ahead, Colleen.
In addition, I noticed that considering that that is the side that you have an actual adjoining neighbor, the choice to put the large dogs in that room, of which you seem to have the greatest number, seems like maybe flipping and putting the smaller dogs in that room might abate some of the noise for your neighbor as well.
For the sake of the tour, we had a large percentage of our dogs in that room. I would say, is that something, how do you do typically? Dogs? Yeah, typically we rotate them around, but that's something that we'll definitely note that makes sense for us to
be a good neighbor, you know, if you're going to have,
Of course,
because as we know, big dogs mean big barking.
of course, of course.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions for the applicant? Grant?
So thank you. So in terms of the soundproofing, is there any intent to soundproof closer to where it seems like there's a gap between the wall? Has that come up?
We could certainly do that and we'll do that, especially if the board wants us to. It's not going to be that big of a deal for us to do it all the way to the ceiling.
And so in terms of, because it felt like the conditions of approval that were outlined by Carly, that most of them, there had been significant progress on, or that we could see where it was going. We have drawings, there's permits in place for it. Felt like the soundproofing was the one that was least sort of defined in terms of what it is that you were doing, and maybe the biggest issue in terms of that is something continuing to refine.
Absolutely. I will point out that we have an additional building permit that we want to pursue post SUP. And like you viewed in and you saw the wire fencing around the rooms. Our plan is to actually have hallways all the way around that area. So that's going to be a natural barrier for that neighbor to have a hallway and walls up and have some empty space in between. So that's something we definitely want to do.
One additional question. So Thank you for the clarification on the number of dogs. That's very helpful. What is the max number that's desired site? This came up July.
I think that ranges, we have the unused space basically that you saw with the old Marquez Deli. So I think that we have the potential to get maybe 25, 30 more dogs compared to the volume that we had there today. But the thing about dog care, it's different. It depends on the dogs themselves. Not all dogs are the same. So there's the volume game, so to speak, but it's also the type of dogs we have and also the volume of staff that we have to be able to care for them.
But in that, I think that was the number that came up previously with 100.
That sounds about right.
Thank you, Member and Alexander. Any other questions for the applicant? Yes.
Our visit today. Side where the dogs are, there's a fair amount of odor. Sound.
At some other facilities that I've worked on in the past, we have worked into getting, again, working with our landlord and getting ventilation in place. So I think in this forthcoming building permit that we want to do, we'll certainly look at that as an option. And again, it's for the best sake of the dogs and the staff. And it's an important thing.
Yes, Mr. Escobar.
So I've had a request. As you know, Maggie is also on the other end, and some of you need to move closer to the mic so that your comments can be heard and we can get them in.
Can we,
I forgot to.
can we move the mic close to us? Thank you very much. I had a similar, as Member Painter had indicated, myself and some other members of the board had similar thoughts that on the interior, some of the interior rooms, there wasn't any airflow. So I can't imagine having dogs in there and not having at least fans or something for not only the quality of air for the dogs, but also for everyone who's in those rooms.
Yes, absolutely, Chairman.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you very much. We may have some others depending upon public comment, but appreciate everything. Being that this is a public hearing, are there any members of the public who wish to speak? If you could come on up to the mic and be sworn in.
Please state your name and address for the record.
509 Camino de los Marques.
Do you solemnly declare and affirm that the testimony you have in reference to this item shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, and do this under the penalties of perjury?
I do.
Mr. Chair, ready to go.
Board members, thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. Again, my name is Carlos Padilla. I manage the building at 509 Camino de los Marques. It's immediately to the east. The building is owned by my 101-year-old mother, so I take care of it for her. And I also operate an engineering business out of that location. I've operated there for the last 17 years. Before anything, I'd like to say, I've always been supportive of businesses in the area. We run business ourselves. We rent to businesses, so I am in support of businesses and good neighbors, all of that. I've been on the record since the beginning. My main concern has been the noise issue. Is when Zumiez started. I think a lot of the neighbors' issues were the noise that were emanating from that outdoor pen. Mine has always been the opposite. It's inside the office. Those two buildings, when we toured today, if you'll note, the party wall I'm talking about, and you noted correctly, nothing's been done to date on it. That runs the entire length of the building. And that we have 4 suites in that building that I occupy one, we lease 3. Every one of those suites is either completely adjacent to Zumiez or at least partially adjacent to Zumiez. So since Zumiez began operation, I've been on the record. I haven't spoken publicly, but I submitted comments that we are hearing barking noises in the office. And I can tell you that as of this morning, that condition has not changed. We're hearing barking, and on occasion, we're actually hearing some music playing as well. I've also stated that up to this point, it's been tolerable, that I want to see if we could be a good neighbor and work things out. So I've spoken with the owner. From the beginning, they said, we run these things. We're a reputable business. We'll work to mitigate those issues, and I believe that they will. But after today's walkthrough, I do have some additional concerns or growing concerns that I'd like to at least get on record and get addressed. And primarily it is that other than the fact that nothing had been done on our wall, which is fine, I'm okay with that. I just want the permanent solution. I'm looking at the matter in which they're addressing the noise issue. And that's basically, I saw on some of those middle walls that they partially enclosed or partially applied, I guess, a foam substance to that. So in looking at this and thinking through it, there's really no meat in this. There's nothing to say. All it says is they have to soundproof it. I'm with you. I noticed, the first thing I noticed is you apply something to the middle third of a wall. That doesn't take care of the noise issue. I'm not saying I'm a noise expert, but I have worked with noise experts. As an engineer, we do noise studies all the time on highway projects. And I know that you need to go full height, up to down. And I also know that there's a number of different ways to mitigate sound. I mean, and there are different costs. I know that to be a fact. You can apply foam. I would think, I'm not going to say that is the cheapest solution, but I think it would be one on the lower end. In my own case, when we were remodeling recently our own building and I was soundproofing between suites, what I did is a more traditional approach. I doubled out the walls and completely insulated them, interior, full height, and then put soundboard over the top of them. I'm not here to say one should be done over the other. I know that money's involved, but I just don't want to get caught in the middle here. I'm hearing concerns about expense, that they're going to be able to say, we soundproofed this and we applied this product. We're done. We met the conditions of the board, and I'm in a position where I'm still hearing barking in my office. Now, as of now, I said we've tolerated it. I will tell you, I have my engineer in ear pods all day because she's trying to work, because even though it's not, horrendously loud sound, it is disturbing to her. I'm more concerned about trying to rent my spaces to future tenants. And if I run into a spot where I'm not being able to lease a spot because of the noise, that's gonna really complicate things. So I'm trying to be proactive here. I've reached out in some emails to the owner. I've gotten some responses, but I'm starting to get a little bit concerned about, I need some way to be able to coordinate this and be involved enough to know that the noise issue's being addressed, and to have some sort of a floor here. I mean, what are we going to say what is soundproofing? What does mitigating mean? I might suggest that it means I'm not hearing dogs barking in my office. That may not be possible, but there needs to be some way to at least work together. There's different ways to handle things. And I'll be honest, I think what I saw today in there with some foam on a third of the wall, I doubt very seriously that's gonna address the issue that I'm concerned with in our building. Other than that, 2 minor things. One is on the next, number 5, that hadn't been addressed. I looked at the dumpster today. That dumpster backs up to our party wall. So the back wall on that dumpster is actually the main building wall of our unit, of our building. I think I understand that there's going to be some interior bollards. My concern would be that when garbage being picked up and dumped and they're raising those dumpsters, if they hit that wall in the rear, that's our wall, and that's office space in there. So My understanding is there's going to be some bollards installed there, and I think that would mitigate that problem. Another minor one I spoke with Mr. Cruz at your place. We used to have a sign up on that wall that said, please don't lean things against the building. We've had that problem in the issue in the past and was assured that that would be replaced. Those two minor things I'd like on the record, but my biggest concern again is the noise issue. I don't know how we're going to, or I don't know how you're going to decide to resolve this, but I would like to have some say so in the matter of, you know, is it helped? Has it not helped? Are there still concerns or not? And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Padilla.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if I may, the individual does bring up a good point in that even with the condition that we've had previously, board never really addressed a decibel level to be reached by Zoomies. So it's kind of a, we can throw up the foam, and if the foam doesn't work, there's still not a decibel level that is reasonable that can be obtained because we don't necessarily know first what the wall is made of that separates the two businesses and what it's going to take for that abatement of noise to meet that decibel level. So you can put up the foam, but the foam, there's various levels of foam that you can put up. Some is very expensive and does a very good job, while others, you know, I bought for my office, cost me $32 to put in my office. It reduces it, yes, but sound is like water. It's going to follow the path of least resistance. And unless there is a level that the board feels comfortable with, and I'm not sure what to target at this point without doing further study, I wouldn't be able to advise you at what decibel level is reasonable for Zoomies to make.
Thank you very much, Dan. Yes, Heather.
Chair Friedman, with reference to decibel levels, I've been actually on a couple of noise roundtables for airports. And so I got to know decibel levels and what is what. And so I brought up a graphic to remind myself, a normal conversation is 60 decibels, an office sounds and office background is 70 decibels. Dog barking is listed as 80 decibels. So I can leave that to the board as to if there's a condition that you would like to impose regarding decibels in Mr. Padilla's tenant spaces, then that's a reference point.
Thank you, Heather. That's really helpful. When you talk about office background, what does that kind of mean?
With reference, Mr. Chair Friedman, with reference to ting sounds and other conversations and just the general office
Telephone ringing,
atmosphere,
that kind of thing.
telephones and the like, that's
Right.
the overall average.
Okay. Excellent. Appreciate that. No, I remember when I had my office building built, one of the things we required was that we'd have soundboarding in between the offices, so that you weren't hearing the other person's conversations when you were trying to have a conversation. So that's very helpful. Thank you. We have the next member of the public. Yes.
And then just in the practicality of things, one thing I forgot to mention that I thought of when we're looking at, say that foam is a good solution, up to down. You got to think about those. If there's dogs in there, I can't see that stuff staying there. So I'm thinking something needs to be really permanent so that it's not, because once they're permitted and everything's going and offices are running and they're in business, if whatever's done is being torn off, you know, and that would be a concern of mine with that particular application. And we're going to be right back to where we started from.
Yeah, thank you. Next member of the public.
Shorter.
Be sworn, please.
Raise your right hand. State your name and address for the record.
Robert Milstein, 1000 Marquez Place, apartment B2. Okay.
Do you solemnly declare and affirm that the testimony you have in reference to this item shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, and do this under the penalties of perjury?
Yes.
He's ready to go, miss.
The first thing I just want to remind the board of, decibel scales are log. Right? So 60 to 70 isn't like 10, it's a log scale. It's on like on a log scale, straight line describes 1 to 10 to 100 to 1,000. Okay, so the decibel scale going 60, 70, 80. So it's one of those weird log scales. Anyway, I live in the building, and I'm on the board of the condominium that's next to Zumiez. And I I feel nervous because I feel like I'm going to do like an indictment, but that's really what I'm here for. The owner of Zumiez stated at the end of his testimony that he inherited Zumiez. He bought Zumiez. And when he bought Zumiez, he didn't check whether or not he had a permit to operate it. He didn't check whether or not he had a permit to have the outdoor park, and he put it there. And these are just early examples of what I'm going to try to demonstrate to you guys is a pattern of kind of casualness that borders on outright neglect. So he bought like I said, he bought the business without a permit. By the way, you said that condition 10 about the curb is complete. It's not complete. What was stated is that this is condition 10 it was initially condition 14. In the summer of 23 was condition 14. Last year it was condition 10. And I made the comment last summer, hey, it took a whole year and he still hasn't painted the curb. The next day the curb was painted. That's how hard it was to paint the curb. But it wasn't painted completely. And it is still not painted completely. The words in here say that the federal yellow curb shall start at the corner of Marquez Place. It does not. It starts in front of Zumiez. So it does not start in front of that antique store. And continue eastward to the driveway entrance of 509 Camino de las Marquez, all the way past Mr. Padilla's place. It does not. It's still not complete. And and the no parking, I don't know when it was stenciled on, but it's within the last couple of weeks, if not today. And I just happened to notice it today when I was driving by. It shocked me. I was driving by when you guys were outside, and so the no parking thing, I wonder when that happened. But the no parking was not stenciled on. So something as simple as painting the curb was not done for a really long time, and it was only done apparently in the face of you guys showing. I got to be his neighbor forever. And anyway, to me, that demonstrates an incredible casualness about compliance with the special use permit that he's putting all kinds of money into. Soundproofing. So I want to tell you a quick funny story about soundproof. I signed a lease in New York like 40 years ago for an office space, about 2,500 square feet of office space. And the work letter says we will be provided air conditioning. And then they tried to charge me an extra $375 in 1983 or something. So it was a lot of money for the circuit for the air conditioner. And I said, wait a minute, the work letter says air conditioning, not air conditioner. Air conditioning includes the ability to plug the air conditioner in. That's how I got out of paying got that included in the work letter. The condition here is soundproofing, not sound mitigation. Soundproofing means soundproofing, not reducing the sound. Soundproofing. Sound travels through air. He's got a real problem. The people were talking about the ventilation for dogs, which makes a lot of sense. Once you ventilate the place, the sound leaves. That's just the way that works. If you want to soundproof a place, you have to pretty much close it. Otherwise, sound will pass. But you certainly can't do anything 2 feet up the wall or 3 feet up the wall. Or I wasn't on the tour. I didn't know there was going to be a tour. One of my neighbors was on the tour, and they put she said there was some of these pads that you put on the wall. Those things don't work. I paid $1,200 to soundproof like a 10-foot stretch of wall in my bed, 12 feet between my bedroom and my neighbor's bedroom. It just cost a lot to soundproof. I don't hear anything from that stuff. Another case of casual compliance is the original. This came up last summer too. The original conditions. Hold a note. I think it was number 6. But I can't swear to it. I won't It's definitely in the original conditions. It said this special use permit applies only to the space which is already in use. But the first monies that were spent were not to, for example, soundproof the walls to Mr. Padilla's building, but to expand the space inside, which was against the terms of the special use. So there, yes, I would hide this on my list before he made several before the applicant made several comments about the employees. I don't know. I'm not a user of Zoomies. I had a little, get out the vote postcard signing thing at my place. And one of the people came over is a customer of Zoomies. And she said to me, you know why there's so much turnover at Zoomies? I said, why do you say that? She said, well, because every time I go in there with my dog, there are other people there. What I do know is that the people who testified in 23, I don't think, I don't know what the turnover is, but you guys can ask because you're allowed to. I can't. What I do know is that the original paperwork on the 23 hearing had one architect. There was an architect at the 23 hearing who was different, and then there's a guy now. So there's turnover and other stuff. And finally, I don't know if you guys recall this, but in the initial testimony given by the applicant in the summer, there was discussion about this problem with his landlady or landlord, I forget. The negotiating, who's going to take care of the outside, which seems reasonable. But also that was the reason for the delay of a lot of the construction that was part of the special use permit. And I don't know, it seemed quite obvious to me. I hope it seemed obvious to you. I'm just trying to remind you of it, that your concerns about the slowness of the compliance with the permit led to a subsequent testimony on his part that he's just going to go do the work, not going to wait anymore. And I don't know if you remember Deering, you actually said that if you come back here in 6 months and things aren't different, when we may not look so favorably upon this. Something for those words. Each time I have gotten in front of you guys, I've reiterated the obvious. It's a great business. Otherwise we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be fighting for the business if it wasn't a great business. So that's not the point. The point is whether or not it should be there. It could have been, like 2 years ago, you could have put it across the street and spent all this money converting the Wells Fargo building, and then the noise would be where it wants to be. Someplace that's not next to people's homes. My fear is that the moment that you grant him a permanent permit, that's English, the moment you grant him a permanent permit, there's going to be no compliance, because under the special use permit, when he has to come in front of this board over and over again, his compliance has been beyond sloppy. Mr. Padilla is much more polite than I am. How can, after a year and a half, the east wall not be insulated? And soundproofed after a year and a half? How can the parking curb not be done for a year and then it's done the next day? And then the no parking is stenciled on later. And they put up a sign saying dog crossing. They didn't enforce it. We'd walk past it. Dog crossing means park here, doesn't it? So I feel like what I've seen over the last couple of years is, enough compliance to just get by. And I hope you decide to take choice number 3.
Thank you very much for your comments. Next member of the public?
Stephanie Benanato.
Please state your name and address for the record. You said your name.
Yeah, Stephanie Benanato, Don Diego Avenue, very close to Zoomies.
Stephanie, do you solemnly declare and affirm that the testimony you have in reference to this item shall be the truth, nothing but the truth, and do so under the penalties of perjury?
Yes, I do.
You're good to go.
Thank you. I have been noticing Zoomies for quite some time, for the past so many years. I live close by and I walk down both Camino de los Marquez and sorry, I can't remember, Vista Linda or Linda Vista. That's how they say it, Linda Vista. And I have noticed a noise at night, barking at night. That has subsided to some extent. However, the smell from the garbage has, is on and off, very noticeable. I don't know if this enclosure will help or not. I am concerned particularly about the number of dogs because you have put no limit on the number of dogs. And I do think that that is really necessary because the more dogs, the more potential trips on any given day. And it's nice to say, well, we'll cut it off, but when somebody shows up and they're on their way to the airport, do you say, oh, I'm sorry, we're full, we can't take your dog, even though we have done it for 100 times before this? I'm not sure you'll say that. And the parking is ridiculous. They had it took forever to put the yellow strip down and it's not even complete. And they even had a sign up for a while that says no parking here and people would just park right in front of it. They didn't care. So the customers don't care about the neighborhood, and that's a huge problem. And maybe Zoomies could start educating them about where they really need to park. And the whole dog crossing thing, there's no such designation as a dog crossing on a public street. I'd like to have a cat crossing where I live because cats have been hit on that part of my street. So why can't I have a cat crossing there? And really, it just encourages people to park on Camino de los Marquez when they should be parking around on, I think it's the court, de los Marquez court there, and eventually in the parking lot and on that backside of the building, where I hope the main entrance will be, and they will cut off the front entrance so that people will really be discouraged from parking on that street. And I too wonder how it could take so very, very, very long to do these driveway improvements, because the last time, 6 months ago, I read it, sounded like it was already done when they hadn't even started. And so I think it's too loose, as somebody else said. I think that you need to impose specific standards. Again, not only about dogs, but perhaps about noise and parking. And I do really mean that too. And get the people parking on Camino de los Marquez to park around the corner, and then eventually to actually use the parking area that will be designated for them. And I don't know what the business can do to encourage that. And again, that stencil, I just walked through there like Friday night. I can tell you there was no stencil on the ground saying no parking. So that's a totally new thing. And again, I don't want to put anybody out of business, but they are right next to a residential area. And I think their special use permit should continue indefinitely, and there should be yearly reviews. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Please raise your right hand, state your name and address for the record.
Seth Friedman, 406.
Do you solemnly declare and affirm that the testimony you have in reference to this item shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, and do this under the penalties of perjury? You're good to go.
And just for the record, I think I mentioned it last time, there's no relationship between Seth Friedman and myself. Go ahead, Mr. Friedman.
Hi. I just decided to come last minute because I wanted to carry this through from what what began a while ago. I just echo what Stephanie and Rohit have just stated mostly. It does seem like a very casual approach to making things happen. Know that things take their time. I'm not naive about that, especially with contractors. But it has always seemed to me like this was a square peg in a round hole, trying to fit this in, trying to make that building into something that works, because the building itself is basically a shell. I can see somebody's put a lot of money into it at this point. I don't know what bearing that has on any of your decisions, because it almost seems like overcompensation or over demonstrating that they're trying to do something in compliance, but a lot of the things have gotten overlooked. I totally echo what I think Stephanie Rohit just said about the fact that the agreements that were made in this room and the permits that were given did not include various things that have happened since then, as far as I know, unless there were other things that were granted in the interim. You know, the first thing that started this all was was because things stank. Because I asked the owner of the building to move the dumpster, if he could possibly consider moving the dumpster, and he gave me a very flippant answer. And then I started down this whole rabbit hole and brought this to the city's attention, not just because of the dumpster, but because of other things. And, you know, it still hasn't changed. I mean, yes, they're building a lovely enclosure for the dumpster, but I too wonder what that's going to do for this pretty noxious poop smell that comes out of it summer months, and even sometimes now. So, you know, I don't have anything a lot new to say other than we're still here and we still have a preference for this to somehow be either not permitted or with a lot of the restrictions that have been mentioned before. Yes, the sound level is definitely decreased. I acknowledge that. There are times when I'm a little confused about this whole parking area thing, which has looked like a construction zone for months. I mean, it looks like a war zone that I don't recall that ever being discussed here in any way, what was going to happen there. Suddenly now there's this fairly large plan and fairly expensive plan that seems to be midway into execution. So I don't know what you folks are going to all do with that. It seems like coming here Zoomies, but like they just said, those people don't live in the neighborhood. A lot of the people of Hacienda Cordoba are still concerned about it, disturbed by it. They're not here. Some of them are elderly, some of them have disability. But you know, just trying to be here is continuing this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Quickly, please.
The condition I couldn't find about, it's condition 6, approval of the sub applies only to the existing operational square footage. It was condition 6. And there was a comment made that we don't know about decibel levels. Actually, condition 8, this is the original from says that applicant must comply with noise levels for the residential zone districts per SFCC 10-5, which sets a maximum of 50 decibels between the hours of 9 and 7.
Thank you. Got it. Any other members of the public who wish to speak? Let the record reflect that we're closing the public comment portion of the hearing. Thank you all for your comments. Yes, Mr. Escobar.
Mr. Chair, just so that I can offer a fourth example, if you choose to accept it. Approve, this is just an example, and it's different from the other ones in that, well, you'll see, approve the continuation of the special use permit, incorporating all existing conditions of approval and any additional conditions discussed in this meeting, which you will have to set as part of your motion. Expiring the special use permit 6 months from today, 1/7/24, if the conditions have not been met based on an inspection by city staff, and requiring Zoomies Dog Daycare to cease operations at this location. Now, that will do one of two things if they fail. We, the city staff, will have to initiate an enforcement process to close them down. That doesn't negate their ability to reapply for a special use permit at this location, but it will stop them at this point in time. That is just an option. If you choose to use a condition of this nature, You have the other motions that you can offer, and I can repeat this as many times as you like.
I think we have them before us. No, I know, other than the one that Mr. Escobar just mentioned. Okay, thank you very much, Dan. Are there any other questions of the board, of staff, or of the applicant? Oh, the applicant had a comment. Please, you come on up to the podium again. You don't have to swear in again. You're already sworn in.
You hear me? You hear me? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Some of the solutions that Mr. Padilla mentioned with double walling and soundboarding are certainly solutions that I've used in other applications I'm familiar with. What I mentioned in my original presentation is that we have this future building permit that we're going to be applying for, which actually applies walls around the rooms to where there's actually a hallway and there's a space. So that's one of the best solutions with mitigating sound, is to actually have like two
Yeah,
walls and
space in
a
between.
hallway in between. So we definitely want to do that. And I would prefer to move forward with that solution as maybe even a stipulation, as opposed to double walling it now and then still doing it again later. But I'm open to any suggestions the board has with that.
I had a question about that because you had mentioned it, and will there be dogs walking through the hallway? Or is it just for people? So, because if you just have a hallway and you have dogs walking through it and barking, then that doesn't solve the problem, does it?
The hallway on the east wall
Yeah.
would be for people.
Okay,
There's, help me with the design a little bit. There may be transporting dogs to our feeding area, right?
right, okay,
You guys saw that, the feeding area there. So there would be transport there, but generally the dogs would be transported,
Mhm.
to the lobby. It would be the new lobby that's in construction.
okay, great. Thank you very much. Any questions of the applicant? Yeah.
Yes, for that second permit, based on your experience with initial permit and moving forward, what would your timeline be for applying for the permit and construction completion?
It's hard for me to speculate on timeline. Just again, our ideal environment, and again, this is again for our transparency that we want with our customers. We want them to be able to walk in and do a full loop, which we kind of push back with you folks doing it just for the dog safety because of reaction and so forth. Ideally, we like to have a wall up with viewing windows in the walls, looking into the rooms and being able to show that. So as far as timeline, it's just the putting up the drywalls. And again, that would be for sound mitigation for Mr. Padilla. That would be a whole nother drywall that would go all the way to the deck. It would be in between the dogs and our eastern neighbors.
You don't know if that would be 3 months or 4 months or 5 months or 6 months?
I think the actual construction portion of it is 2 to 4 months.
Yeah, okay. Yes, Mr. Escobar.
Mr. Chair, just understanding the dynamics that have been since this has moved forward, going from the beginning when you issued the special use permit, and then the re-review, and then again the re-review, and conditions are still outstanding. You do have within your authority the ability to set a date upon which, or a time frame upon which, a permit must be applied for in order for the applicant to move forward. I mean, you have that ability to think in the future, identify. You have 2 weeks to get this permit in. If it's not in, the permit expires. You can actually start setting more rigorous conditions that force staff to address those issues in a more aggressive manner, either by looking, asking, showing, and if they fail, then there's no moving forward. And that's just so that you're not waiting 3 or 4 months again, 6 months again. This is within your authority. You have that ability to start setting those parameters for the applicant to start meeting those conditions.
Okay, thank you. Yes,
So for, say they were to put in a 2x4 stud and put double sheetrock, reasonable sound attenuation strategy. I don't believe they would be required to have a permit for that because they wouldn't be creating a new space.
I am not the expert on that, but I would be able to bring somebody who does have that knowledge up to the podium if you do wish. I don't know if a permit's required for that or not, but if we can bring Mr. Trujillo up, he'll be able to tell you whether it could be required, should be required or not.
I was going to ask the same question.
I was waiting to hear from Mr. Trujillo.
Chairman Friedman, how are you? Richard Trujillo, I'm the building division manager, City of Santa Fe. A permit would be required for any type of interior walls, especially separation. Still need to meet egress requirements. So anytime you're adding any type of hallway, we verify the type of dead end corridor, as you know, and so forth. So permit is required for any type of interior wall change of floor plan.
How about if there's an existing wall and you're just adding to it though, and it doesn't want to affect people coming in and out of the building per se, but just alongside the wall?
So there should always be an inspection when there's a demising wall.
Okay,
A demising wall usually is separating different units from each other. Reasoning for that is because you need to maintain the fire rating requirements for each unit. So I would say yes, a permit would be required if you're modifying an existing interior wall. For the reasoning of getting an inspection and verifying that the integrity of the wall is not hurt with the modification of it, mainly on your rating requirements based on the building.
okay. Thank you for that clarification, Mr. Trujillo. Good to see you. Yes, of course.
I have a question for staff. If we were to think more outcomes based, going along the decibel line, versus being prescriptive about a solution for soundproofing, is there precedent you kind of threw out 80 decibels is the dog bark, 70s office. Is there any other precedents that you've experienced where you could advise us on a reasonable good neighbor decibel?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I'm afraid I have not come across anything like that in my time with the city. So you are going to be establishing a condition based on the facts of the staff, facts of the applicant, and testimony from the audience.
So Heather,
Thank you, Chair Friedman, Member Douglas. That has happened in other boards, not in particular these land use boards, but certainly a decibel is something that the board can set as a maximum. And and I can remind you, but typical office noise is around 70, household noise is around 55 decibels.
I had a question about that because previously we had a requirement about the applicant complying with noise levels for residential zone districts, which was 50 decibels during the hours of 9 p.m. and 7 a.m. and a maximum of 55 decibels between the hours of 7 a.m. and 9 p.m. So when we were talking about that, we were talking about the sound outside. I think we were talking about the sound outside the building. not necessarily the sound on the other side of the wall, but the sound outside of the building, if it's on the other side of the wall, is still the sound outside the building, right?
Very challenging to do this with something like a dog bark that's a
Right.
like for airplanes, 85 decibels is frequently the level that they say, okay, you have to mitigate. You have to change flight patterns. It's consistently above that, but it's also based on duration of time of exposure.
Yeah.
Dog bark, it's not, I don't think we're going to hit levels with, and again, it's the noise it's cutting.
Right. Yep. It's tricky because I've actually handled a case that had to do with decibel levels. And it's interesting because you look at items like lawnmowers or hair dryers and what kind of decibels those have compared to things like a shotgun shooting off in the distance, and they're comparable. So what's a problem, what's not? Yes, Mr. Escobar.
Mr. Chair, in a way, the board has already somewhat set, based on the conditions of approval, a decibel level. And that decibel level is in line with our 1410 environmental requirements for noise levels. So if you have already set that decibel level at 50 dB, which will work for nighttime dB noise for the city of Santa Fe, then you're not going to be able to turn an on-off switch to go from 50 to 55 during the day. So it would just be a one-time construction method that sets dB levels to 50 decibel levels at a maximum for anything emanating out of that building. In which case that should satisfy the ordinance and that should mitigate the impacts across the board for neighboring properties, because it's the allowed decibel level for nighttime use within the city of Santa Fe, which is a much stringent dB level for daytime use across the board.
I would just worry about how you're going to test and like the variety of places you would need to test, and that there's a condition there now, and that, go belt and suspenders. I mean, right now I think the public comment about the mitigation and attenuation, which is happening, but not like a proofing or stopping, no solid barrier.
Well, you could have both. You could have both conditions, right? So I wouldn't want to just have the decibel condition. I would want to have something else.
If I may, one method would be to ensure that the area of concern is mitigated appropriately, not necessarily mitigating the area that doesn't need to be mitigated because it's facing more of a commercial area. And that way the noise is going in a different direction, but it's stopping or being mitigated against the neighbor and the residents. And then we do have equipment. I'm fairly certain we still have team members that can use that equipment. We can measure at the property line next door if the neighbor will allow us, so that we can identify what those decibel levels are and
So
ensure that
the
they're
equipment
meeting those.
runs for a period of time, for many hours, right? And then
We can, we'll definitely do some research as to what would be the method to ensure that condition is appropriately met, and then measure it. And then from there, it would be up to the land use director to decide whether or not that condition has been met and we can move forward or not.
okay, thanks very much. Are there any other questions for the applicant or staff?
Get the decibels down to 50 or 40, whatever. He's still over there, still here. May not be 50, it might be 45. Seems like there's an impact that we're really not addressing. That's the continual sound that's going on. Sound that.
I'm sorry, Board Member Painter cannot hear anything that you're saying, sir. Can you make sure to turn on your microphone? Thank you.
Should I start from the beginning?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
I have a concern that if we just try to hit a certain decibel level and it's sounds are still coming below that decibel levels and internally through the common walls, they can still hear dogs barking all the time. It may not be the loudest dog barking, but it's a continual dog barking, or dogs barking all through the day. I don't think we've really achieved as much as we really need to as far as permitting a use as a special use in a neighborhood that's impacting people on a daily and continual basis. I think what I would like to see, and I think the applicant needs to think long and hard about how long he wants to really pursue making this permanent location, is that he hire a sound engineer to come in and design something that is intended to mitigate the sounds that he is producing. This putting foam rubber, very soft foam rubber up on the wall, I don't think is going to do it. And he can keep doing these different homemade type of solutions. Maybe eventually he gets there. Maybe he doesn't, because after another review of this, I suspect that's going to be the last one, that's my guess. So I'm more concerned that we don't put just the decibel level, that we try to mitigate sound where it's not disturbing people, especially in the same building.
I think the point about the separation is a good one, and that the neighbor is the one who's most impacted. I mean, there aren't like there's not a ton you can do. I mean, you can put sound up that softens it, and you can put up walls with air gap separation that stop it. I mean, I wonder too, if we did put up a solid wall in between there, you still have glass at the front of your building, that the sound is going to travel right through it, or at least not be mitigated as much. But it does feel like that addressing that wall, that you have a concrete wall, who knows what's in that, if it insulated at all. And you probably get vibrations through there too from the dog bark. So having that as like a separated wall where the studs are not touching the wall, you have a consistent air gap in there, and it's sound taped at the top.
Hey, Commissioner Alexander, I don't disagree with what you're
Yeah.
saying. That's why I think an engineer needs to come in and design something for this use. This is not an ordinary use that we would have in a residential use, in a residential area. And as such, it may take something more strenuous to be put up there to really mitigate those sounds. And it may not be just that wall. You're right. It may be 3 walls have to be done in order to block the wall sound. And maybe it's not double pane windows, maybe it's triple pane windows. But I think a sound engineer, and I'm not trying to find work for sound engineers, believe me, but somebody with some.
You have somebody's
that
card,
Needs to look at them. I'm sorry.
but you have somebody's card with you?
Yeah, but by the way, I'm on the side.
Mr. Chair, I think what we have is a couple options. When you're dealing with the pressure waves that are going to penetrate walls and create those decibel levels that are audible to the human ear, you have 2 choices. You can stop them, as Board Member Alexander has identified, and that's going to take engineered walls. That's going to take more construction. You can mitigate, and you can bring them down to a level that is already identified within Chapter 14, within our ordinances, as a number that we can enforce. Or you can deny the permit one way or the other for a use that is not compatible for the area. I think that the applicant can probably address the sound levels to accomplish our ordinance requirements of 50 decibel levels, which is what we allow at night for nighttime use. That 50 decibel levels will certainly be allowed within daytime operations across the board throughout the city of Santa Fe. This is in a C2 district adjoining a residential district, so that would meet our rules and regulations if we can measure those pressure waves and dB levels to meet those standards, and we certainly can do that. So I think you have a lot to consider here. And those, I think, are the options that you have to take. One, if you're going to require them to completely soundproof, I think you're going to have to address that through a different condition.
Yeah, I mean, I I think the idea of suggesting a sound engineer is a good one, but I would rather have a requirement of what they have to do, and then it would make sense for them to have someone come in and make sure they do it the right way. Because otherwise you folks have spent a lot of money already. And it would be a shame that you spent more money to do what you think would soundproof the walls and it turns out it didn't, and then you have a problem. So I wouldn't want to tell them they have to have a sound engineer, but if we have requirements about sound levels, it certainly would be a good suggestion. Either that, hiring an architect, or a builder who knows what they're doing, who that can make sure it's. And I do want to clear up a confusion in my mind, Dan, because you're just talking about 50 decibels during the evening hours, but our last requirement cited chapter 14-3-6, et cetera, and that had different decibels between the day and the evening. And that was number 8 of the handout that Carly gave us today. And so I don't want to do something I'd like to just abide by what the current code is with respect to the decibel level.
Mr. Chair, what Carly's condition references is 1410-2-3, which is our noise ordinance.
Right.
And that does bring down the noise decibel levels for residential areas to 50 from 9 o'clock to 7 a.m. and 55 from 7 to 9 p.m. But if you're going to design and construct and build, you're going to build for one of those numbers. It's either going to be 55 or 50. And in this case, we want it to be 50 if they're going to have nighttime operations, because we want to be able to mitigate those barking dogs for nighttime noise abatement.
Okay. I hear what you're saying. Okay. Any other questions for the applicant or staff? All right, what's the pleasure of the board? Do I hear a motion? Any more discussion between ourselves?
The one thing that may be beneficial to have more discussion about is the duration of time. And the
Mhm.
idea that, since any mitigation that they're going to do is going to require a permit, and I think the timeline of back and forth on permitting, it should be relatively simple, but you're still talking of 3 to 4 months when they pencil the paper to when they get a permit on a minimum. That I don't think having them come back prior to there should be a reasonable timeline where they can get it done, but quick. I think the comments that this has taken a long time and we don't want to draw it out unnecessarily.
Yeah, I'm a little, going through today, I saw a lot of progress and I thought the place looked great. But some of the comments from the public concerned me that a lot of things were done, just because we were having the site meeting, you had to get them done and they were done kind of last minute, which, concerns us as a board. But we also want to be fair to you folks. I personally do not want to have a condition that if it's not met, we're going to tell them they have to cease operations. I think that's, for me, too severe, especially when you have a business that's serving a very good public purpose, that's part of the community, become part of the community, that's well received, and that spent a lot of money already on a business. And I don't think the applicant from the beginning really knew about the permit issues, and it came as a surprise. So I didn't think there was a nefarious intent from the start, and they're trying since then to work with the board to get these things done. So I think there's been progress along the way. So I think what we do need to do is figure out what a practical time frame. I would like the fact that they didn't have to get a permit for for an interior wall if they have to do an interior wall.
I think the idea that, the timeline that the applicant talked about was the primary work should be done in the next 2 months, but landscaping is not going to be able to be finished
Right.
With our general 6 month coming back, the idea that within 6 months, you know, I think the 50 decibel thing that Mr. Escobel is discussing, I think makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
That idea that, okay, in 6 months, can you show that that you've done this, and whether or not it's 100% at that point, I think then the follow-up piece would be shorter.
Right. Okay.
But I think 8 months or 9 months is sort of too long.
I agree. I'd like to keep it on a shorter schedule because a lot of other things should be done by 6 months.
But then perhaps if the mitigation wasn't finished, or there's still questions, or the decibel levels are above 50, then maybe there's a 3 month follow-up.
Okay. So does somebody want to make a motion? Of course.
Yeah, so my question would be if we just reiterate in our motion that the decibel count and then let them address it however they choose to address it. That's the goal, right? We would be telling them how, because we don't know, we're not sound engineers. We
Right.
don't know what's the right way to do it. And so it seems, okay, I just want to make sure that we're.
Yeah, I mean,
not
there
gonna add
could be,
a-
there could
as
be
a
some
si-
amazing soundproofing. I don't know what type of wall that is. I don't know if it's a brick wall. I don't know if it's like the old, like concrete, things that they did in the prison. Yeah, the
Given the
pentile.
age of
It's the air gap is what's critical, is that
Yeah.
there's not a connection point from the new wall to the existing.
Yeah, there has to be some sort of air gap in there. I agree.
Okay, I
do it.
just wanted to make sure that we weren't trying to add another condition. We're just basically reinforcing the conditions that already exist.
Yeah, and I don't, it's up to the applicant. If you think you can do the hallway, if you think the hallway, first of all, you have to have somebody be able to tell you whether the hallway is going to mitigate the noise level. I don't necessarily know that's true. So that's an issue for you before you start spending the money on doing the hallway. I think before you do the hallway, you need to figure out whether that actually would mitigate the noise. And if not, you need to do the wall, period, regardless of whether you do the hall, even if you lose some space. Because it won't be a tremendous amount of space. So what's the pleasure of the board?
Sorry, one more question for Mr. Escobar. So the 10.2.5, I think that's the one that says maximum of 50 decibels between 9 PM.
Mr. Chair, Board Member Alexander, that is correct. It talks about, now, the issue here is this particular business is in a non-residential district, but the adjoining district has the residential uses. So you're targeting a residential value because it's adjoining a residential use. So that's what you're looking at.
Is duration of time addressed in that?
I'm not sure I followed that question. What do you mean?
So like any point in time, if it's above 50 decibels, like someone slams a car door, I mean, versus like a continuation of like 50 decibels for 5 minutes over the course of an hour. Is that?
Does the code, I can't remember the code addresses that it has to be that certain decibel over a certain period of time. Do you happen to know, Heather?
You look, Chair Friedman, at the definition. I'll get back to
Okay,
you.
thank you.
So 10.2.6 sound level measurement. Sound level measurement shall be made with a sound level meter using a weighting scale in accordance with the standards promulgated by the American National Standards Institute in order to reasonable standards adopted and tested by the city of Santa Fe, city manager and appointed designee. So we would have to take a look at that manual to identify what those standards are and then conduct those measurements in accordance with those needs.
Yeah, and it would be reasonable not to have just one bark. Yeah, I think that covers it. Okay. All right, who wants to make a motion? Member Deering.
I move that we approve the continuation of the special use permit requiring the applicant to appear before the board in 6 months to review progress on the outstanding conditions adopted on June 6th, 2023, including specific attention to the decibel level required by 10.2.6 city, 10.2.5 in the city code.
Right. So we're targeting a 50 decibel level.
Yeah, specifically, when we say target level of 50 decibels in the motion.
I'm okay with that. I was just trying to refer to the code so that we didn't have to put all the details.
Thank you.
Perfect. All right, do I have a second to that motion?
Sorry, was that all the existing conditions of approval?
Yes. Okay. Yes,
Clarify the noise level for 10 to 0.5 was not in our original conditions that were approved, were they? We're adding it. Okay, we are adding that.
it was part of the original conditions. It said both 50 for a certain hour and 55 for a certain hour.
Maybe restate it one more time and
Yeah. Sure. Yes.
Actually, and Chair Friedman, if I could just address the board briefly. Carly just brought to my attention that I guess condition number 10 that staff recommended in June of 2023 wasn't actually adopted by the board. That was a condition that said applicant shall limit daily maximum capacity to 100 dogs, including boarding and daycare customers. Quote, grooming only clients are exempt from this requirement. And so we just wanted to clarify whether that condition would be included in the motion that's being made tonight, or if that would be excluded.
No.
At the time, we didn't want to include it for the issues that were brought up by the applicant. You could have
Yeah.
small dogs and two.
I know. We didn't want to tell them how to run their business. I'm not worried about that as long as they adhere to the other requirements personally.
Okay, would staff prefer to restate my motion or would you like me to do it? If you've taken it into the notes. I don't know what's appropriate. Since it's been seconded already, I don't know if I can.
Well, you can, you can withdraw your second of the motion and you can restate it. I don't remember
Whatever you
it being
prefer.
actually official. I don't think it was officially seconded. So why don't you restate your motion?
Okay. I move that we approve the continuation of the special use permit requiring the applicant to appear before the board in 6 months to review progress on the outstanding conditions adopted on June 6th, 2023, with the addition special attention to adhering to the noise ordinance listed in the city code 10.2.5, which states that the mitigation shall be to a 50 decibel.
And without condition number 10. Yeah. We'll just make
Didn't
it
it?
clear. Okay.
Okay, and to clarify that condition 10 has not been added to the.
Okay, is there a second?
second.
All those in favor? Oh, yeah, discussion?
I'm concerned that we're ending over back. The location where it maybe doesn't. Might be able to get them down if you get 15 decibels. And they're still. Maybe people in the other offices adjacent to them that not getting screeching loud dog barking, but they're getting continual dog barking all day. And for that reason, I'm too much to help them if you put noise. So I think even at 50 decibels.
Mr. Chair, we can't hear.
I'm just saying that I think we're doing too much for the applicant to make it work for him. I think he got into a bad business deal perhaps. We're trying to make it work and that's great if he can make it work. But I think absent of really coming out with a plan to mitigate the noise, mitigate the smells, and not just putting up a couple of walls around a dumpster and saying we're done, or putting up soft foam panels on the wall saying we're done. Until you somehow prove that you've done and really address these issues, I'm not comfortable voting in favor of it tonight or in 6 months. So tonight I'll be voting against it. I just want to let everybody know that's why I'm voting.
Okay. So why don't we just finish our vote before we do that? So all those in favor? Aye. And we have one opposed. Yes, Mr. Escobar.
Mr. Chair, you could also include timeframes upon which the applicant must submit building permits to ensure that within that 6-month timeframe, you're going to hit your target.
Yes.
But you might have to amend your motion or reconsider the motion to actually include those types of
My
parameters.
concern with putting a deadline on the applicant is until he gets the information that he needs in order to know what he wants to do, we don't know what permit he's going to have to apply for. Because it might be a soundproofing wall, it might be the hallway will work, it might be something else. And it's hard to say you need a permit within 2 weeks if he can't get a sound engineer in there to tell him how he needs to do it and get the drawings to submit for the permit. I'm concerned that we don't have the expertise or the information to put a time frame on it at this point. So if we say that the end product has to be done in 6 months, and then it's up to him to be a responsible person and get the permits in a timely manner to get the work done in the 6 months. Because I'm going to say what I said again, you know, we are bending over backwards to accommodate this and give you more time to get things done. You need to do it.
Yeah, I think at this point you've heard from a bunch of us that we're serious about wanting to make sure this is done. And, you know, like I said before, I want you to continue as a viable business. You put a lot of money into this and you serve the public. And regardless of the fact that I'm a dog lover and have dogs, it's, you know, it's a good business for the city of Santa Fe and you have a good clientele. But at some point, you really need to take care of these things or else it's going to go sideways in a bad way. None of us want that to happen. So.
Would offer one more editorial comment that this is a commercially zoned property and the baseline isn't no noise. That
Right.
a Zumba class.
Right, that's true.
That yes, like they have made efforts, the efforts have been to expand and make their business viable. And now they need to really look at separation spaces, really try and make.
I agree.
Isn't a special use.
That's what I mean, so the baseline use could be louder.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's a good point. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. Appreciate you being here this evening. And we'll see you again in 6 months. Okay. All right. Thanks a lot. Any staff communications?
Yes, Chair Friedman. I would like to bring you up to date on several initiatives within the Land Use Department. There's 2 very large projects we're working on. One is the Land Development Code update, and the other one is the General Plan update. So we have been fortunate in that we've been able to work through the Land Development Code update code hygiene. So the intent is to make the code more understandable with the use of graphics and tables and the like, as well as to make any corrections to spelling and all of that, just going through it with a fine tooth comb. One initiative that was added was additional affordable housing incentives. And that was in collaboration with Daniel Werawath, who is the State Affordable Housing Officer, as well as HomeWise and some other industry representatives. So we will be going to through the public hearing process in February to get an action on the Land Development Code.
Yay.
So that's exciting. Yes.
This is exciting.
And then on January 29th, we'll be presenting to the governing body the sort of kickoff of the general plan update. So, and it will outline the structure of the general plan update and the steps that we're going to be taking over time, the community engagement plan and the like. So if it's a pleasure of the board, we can also make that presentation to this board at the next meeting so that you can be in the loop. But one of the really advantageous things that way things have come together with the general plan and the land development code is oftentimes at hearings and meetings and the like, lay people don't really understand the difference between the general plan and what the land development code does. Like the general plan is that high level policy development and priorities. And then the land development code is almost where the rubber hits the road in terms of where you can place a building and the like. So we are actually going to be able to do engagement for both projects at the same time. So a lot of the key issues that have come up in the land development code update and the assessment are key issues associated with the general plan. So we're going to be able to move forward in a faster manner. Also, a portion of the general plan update is a development of a digital platform. And this is something in the city of Santa Fe is pretty far behind. And so the intent is to have a GIS platform where you can click on a property, get the historic, if it's in a historic district, the historic information, the property inventory form, any building permits for that address throughout the city and the like. So we really are trying to become more transparent. You know, it drives me crazy when we get public records requests for a building permit, when you can actually have the public be able to go on the website at 10 o'clock at night and be able to pull that information.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that sounds great, Heather. That'll be when you pull up the building, when you have the access to the building permit, will that include the documents related to the building permit or just what happened with it?
Chair Friedman, it will include all documents associated with it.
Fantastic.
And
Yay. Reminds me when the Museum of Natural History and Science, which I've had the pleasure of being on the Board of Trustees for a number of years, updated our data collection base and computerized everything so that if you wanted to look up a particular fossil or, anything that was kept in the museum, you could go in the database and find it about wherever you were in the world. And this is a good thing.
we're excited and, it's definitely something the community needs as well.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Any matters from the board? Happy New Year, everybody. Thank you all for a very reasoned and well thought out discussion this evening. Yes, Colleen, and thank you to staff for all of your input and work on this.
Since Ms. Winston has, stepped down from the board, do we have the need to?
I didn't know
elect
that she had. Had she really?
Yes.
What did I
So
know?
do we need to have,
We need to,
vice chair?
we do need to have a vice chair.
That is true, but in order for that to happen, I would have to have it on an agenda
Yeah,
so that
yeah.
that vote can occur, just
I
like
am
we've done in
bringing
the
it up,
past.
So you probably want to put that on the agenda for next time.
Gee, she's my law partner. She didn't even mention to me. She was scared. to
She
do that.
told me at the last meeting.
Oh, did she? Maybe I missed the last minute. That's why. I think so. Yeah, it was a lot.
Yeah, right.
Okay, thanks a lot.
We.
Yes, any other
Yeah,
matters?
I
Okay.
just wanted to make sure.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.